when the kids came along, all things changed. I was no more Cheryl's number one priority. She was spending so much time with the kids.
I then became quite resentful in our marriage.
At that time, I felt very neglected, like I didn't matter to Cheryl.
Is this really the person I want to spend the rest of my life with? I started to ask stupid questions like that.
There were times then I would think, is this what marriage is all about?
I was born in South Africa, in Johannesburg. I was one of 6 children. I was brought up as a Methodist. I went to church every Sunday, belonged to the youth group, and I also was a Sunday school teacher. So church and God was very much part of my upbringing.
I was brought up in a pretty Catholic family where my parents saw to it that we went to Mass every Sunday without fail.
My parents, their relationship was quite dysfunctional. There was lots of fights, lots of breakups, lots of mum leaving home, us staying with my grandparents, and there was a lot of upheaval. I was 16. I met Eugene. My parents were quite strict and they didn't really want me to have a boyfriend because I was still studying, and in those days you completed your school and then you had a boyfriend. And I turned 18, and then he came to speak to my dad and said, you know, I would like to marry your daughter and spend the rest of my life with her. And my dad was mad. He was like, are you crazy? She's 18. Are you crazy? No way. This is not going to happen.
We decided to get married. And the reason, I think one of the driving forces behind us deciding to get married so young was that because of the curfews her parents had put on us, we didn't really have time to get to know each other. So we thought, well, we'll get married young. We'll be able to see the world together, and we will be married, and after maybe 5 years or so, we will settle down and have kids and all those kind of things.
My dream was that my marriage was going to be very, very different to my parents' marriage. To me, marriage was you got married to this person that you really loved, and you know, you just worked together on all your problems, you solved all your problems together, nothing was too difficult, and we're going to just live happily ever after.
My parents were from the old school, where my dad was, whatever he said was law. If he told you do this, you did it, you never questioned it. So that was my thing. When I get married, that's how it's going to be. I'm not going to be doing anything. My wife will look after me and she'll cook and all those kind of things. I didn't really know about the sacrament of marriage. What I knew was I was going to the church, and we're going to get married in the church, and we're going to get the blessing of God, and He would bless our marriage, and that was about it. Cheryl was more involved in the Catholic Church than I was. And then Cheryl converted, she became Catholic, and it was pretty easy because she had all the lessons and all those kind of things that led up to that, and she became Catholic. We got married in the Catholic Church.
Everything was fine, and we were in love, and everything was just going wonderfully well.
The kids came along unexpected because we thought that we were going to be married for 5 years before we have any kids. So when the kids came along, all things changed. I was no more Cheryl's number one priority. She was spending so much time with the kids. I was feeling like I'm supposed to be your number one priority. I thought that's why we got married. I was always thinking about all these things. Cheryl was much more sociable than I was. She seemed to find time to be at the kids' netball things, socializing with the mothers, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, at home, I would come home from work and she would have no time for me. At that time, I felt very neglected, like I didn't matter to Cheryl. I looked at it like my role was just to go out to work, come home, provide, that's it. It was making me more lonely. I will just go into one corner and listen to the radio just to unwind.
In South Africa, it was not the male thing to do to change a baby's nappy or to wash a baby's bottle or do anything to do with the baby. The mum had to do that. But to me, it was a little annoyance when you've got 3 kids and you are rushing around doing things, whether it be making a bottle or changing a nappy, fed the kids, bathed the kids, in the kitchen, washing up dishes, having cooked, cleaning the kitchen, and Eugene was sitting and listening to his favorite romantic music all by himself while I was cleaning the kitchen. That was something as well that I didn't like, but I never spoke about.
When I was feeling isolated and alone, and that I decided to do other things to take me away from home so that I didn't have to be confronted with what I was being confronted with at the time when I got home from work, what I thought was a cold shoulder. So I used to play soccer. So twice a week, I would come home from work and then just change and then go out and then come back when the kids are pretty much asleep, just so that I don't have to be having that cold shoulder when I get home. So that's how I was dealing with that isolation and loneliness that I was feeling at home. But that did nothing. It did nothing for our relationship. It made us even drift further apart.
I then became quite resentful in our marriage. I became resentful. It was like, I was doing this, you weren't doing that, you're not doing your share, you're not pulling your weight, you're not thinking about me. All this dialogue was happening in my head. And that was the beginnings of me going, is this really the person I want to spend the rest of my life with? I started to ask stupid questions like that.
We immigrated in 1985 to Australia, and then we stayed with my parents when we initially came, and things weren't that great living with family.
Eugene's mum was quite, to me, was very controlling, and I saw things that she did and I didn't like it. And I sometimes thought that maybe Eugene should stand up for me and he should say, Mum, that's not right, or, you shouldn't do that, or give Cheryl a break or whatever. But he never, in his gentle, calm, caring way, he kind of just thought, it's no big deal, So I had a sense that he should have been more, had my back more. So that was an annoyance for me as well.
I think when Cheryl did bring it to my attention, to me it seemed just a natural thing because it was my mum.
A few years ago, we lost our granddaughter. So at 3 months old, she was diagnosed with an illness. It was called mitochondria.
That was very hard for us because firstly, it was our first grandchild and it really put a strain on our relationship. And the reason for that was Cheryl's ideas and my ideas were totally different.
I remained very positive. I prayed and I believed that God was with us no matter what. And that's how I was through her illness. So this was at 3 months. She was in ICU. And during that time, the doctors were very negative. They were speaking over her crib to her parents, to our daughter and son-in-law. And they were speaking about donating her organs. For me, that was quite distressing because I believed that she had life in her and that God was with her. And I was quite upset that people who were not God could be making decisions about her life.
I think we both believe in God, that God knows best whatever the outcome's going to be. But I think because I am more a practical person, like I like things to be structured and follow the rules, when the doctor said, this is the time where you have to say goodbye and your granddaughter's going to pass away and all those kind of things, I was accepting of that.
Eugene and my daughters seemed to me like they formed an alliance and I was on the outer. So I was looked at as being quite silly or stupid. It shook me as a wife, it shook me as a parent, and it shook me as a grandparent. Yeah, for me that stands out as the biggest problem that I encountered in our marriage.
What that did with us, at the time I didn't know, because I was so caught up in what's happening with the family and trying to be there for my daughters and forgetting about Cheryl's side or forgetting about how Cheryl is feeling. So that really put a wedge between us. So I was torn between my daughters and Cheryl. And I remember those times where we wouldn't talk. So we would bottle all this up, what's happening. We wouldn't talk about it.
I think that journey for them from perhaps Gabrielle's christening to when she died 2.5 years later, I think that was one of the hardest things that I, as a person, witnessed. To see that beautiful couple that was happy and they were still in love, but they were just so far apart.
There were times then I would think, is this what marriage is all about? Is this what I want? But I always remember our vows at our marriage day, where I said I'll do it for better or for worse. So it was a commitment that I made to myself and to God and to Cheryl, that I believe that God brought us together for a reason. And there's no way, no matter what happens, that I can say, this is it, I'm out of here. It wasn't something that I can do.
If it wasn't for our involvement and our experience of Marriage Encounter all those years prior to our granddaughter's diagnosis, her illness, and then her subsequent death, I don't think that our relationship would have survived what we went through in that time.
Yeah, I think because even though we were going through those things in our life at the time, we still had the support of our Marriage Encounter community. So we were still actively involved in community, meaning that we went to monthly meetings every month where we got together with other couples and we shared on what's happening in our lives, and seeing the relationship of those couples at the meeting really challenged us to get back on track and get our relationship back together.
When we were going through that big crisis, that I kind of was just going with the flow. I was just in survival mode, came from day to day, just pretty much surviving and trusting in God that we will get out at the other end, but not putting in much effort. And I think I used a bit of a superior attitude at the time, thinking if things are going to get better, then Eugene needs to be the one to do the work. So my attitude was that, which led to my behavior of just being slack and not moving forward with any kind of gusto.
Yeah, and I also think that Cheryl's more sociable, and I think she can hide her feelings better than I can. So I looked at Cheryl during that time, and to me it didn't seem like she was as affected as I was. So it was up to me to make the change and take the first step. The step I really did was I changed my mindset, and I realized that we are two totally different people, and our ideas are totally different, and how I see something might be totally different to how Cheryl sees it, and her actions towards that are different to mine. So I need to start to accept Cheryl the way she is at that time. So that was a big change for me to make, to accept her.
Seeing that I was accepted for who I am and for what I believe and how I trust and how my faith works for me, that was accepted. I was accepted with that. Then that softened me then to be open and ready for Eugene. Our daily dialogue really helped us to come to terms with just how we were feeling, the hurt, the disappointment, the sadness, the joy, the fear that we went through at that time. In our early marriage, but especially in the time of that great, of Gabriella's illness and how it affected us and affected our family. So all those feelings, we went back to our daily dialogue and we started to explore those feelings. And I think even up till today, to be able to talk about our feelings and just how our lives changed.
After I decided that I need to make a change, that really helped Cheryl to open up. So when she did speak, even though she realized that it might not be what I think, I was willing to listen to her. And that was, I think, the turning point for us. When I was able to listen, then she also listened to me. And then our communication got better, I think. I think another thing that helped us along the way is not taking each other for granted, and also what we call in marriage encounter reevaluation. Reevaluate where we are in our relationship. So like taking stock of where we are so that we don't fall into that hole again. Before we fall into that hole, we can stop and say, hey, we need to do something about this, you know what I mean? So that's a very important thing to reevaluate. And it's not only when you are in the hole, it's when you can see yourself heading towards there. Because we live with each other every day. We can see when our relationship is not what it's supposed to be. So that reevaluation really helps us to get back and just take stock of where we're going.
It's hard to forget what you've been through, and that's why we can recall it so vividly to you, even though it's 8 years ago. We can recall it so vividly, but we do ask for forgiveness. So we might not forget, but we do ask for forgiveness. And it's also a respectful thing. Asking for forgiveness is very different to saying, I'm sorry. So, will you forgive me for me being uncaring or being unkind or me raising my voice is very different to just saying, I'm sorry.
It doesn't matter who says it first or who seeks for forgiveness. I don't think it matters. I think the most important thing that is there that you can or want to be in relationship. If you, like, as you're asking for forgiveness, that's the step to get to happiness. Because let's be honest, we never always happy in our marriage. We always falling and sliding and starting again. But it's so good when you are in relationship and happily married.
My life is a miracle. Every child has a story of God's love to share. Shalom world, tune into God's love story.